And our SABC News International Editor Sophie Mokoena has been watching developments there. Sophie, good evening to you and welcome. Will it be extended, left to expire, or is there room for reforms and changes in the framework of AGOA? These are some of the questions around what now and what next for AGOA beyond 2025. We heard some of those themes playing out. What's your assessment?
Well, many people are confident that it will be renewed. We know that the President of the United States of America yesterday, Joe Biden, issued a statement. If I were to read one line, he said yesterday, "I strongly support the reauthorization of the African Growth and Opportunity Act as a bipartisan law." You know that it has enjoyed the support of different stakeholders within the Congress. And therefore, President Biden saying that he is encouraging the Congress to work on this, and he made a commitment that he will be working with the Congress and other African partners to renew this agreement or this law beyond 2025. And one thing to note, the words where he said, Africa is the future, and so when Africa succeeds, the whole world succeeds. We know that there's currently a scramble for Africa. All influential countries do want to do business with Africa. They want trade relations. They also want political relations. And as you know that for political relations to flourish, you must have strong trade relations.
Yeah. The thing is, you know, one of the big questions, Sophie, that comes up with AGOA is the fact that it's underutilized. Only half of the eligible countries under AGOA actually have utilization strategies in place. 35 countries are eligible. And you see for countries that do utilize it, optimization in many of their sectors, particularly in apparel, Ghana, Kenya, Lesotho, Madagascar, Ethiopia, those countries that are really using it to its maximum. Would you agree that this is one of the questions, the policymakers have to ask themselves is, why is that happening? Why is it underutilized? And how can that change?
Well, indeed, many leaders, ministers who are here, who are going to participate, most of these ministers are ministers of trade and industry, do admit that they are not utilizing this agreement to its full potential. And therefore, during this critical time where countries are trying to revive their economies, you know that due to COVID-19, the war in Ukraine, and now the conflict in the Middle East, you really have to come up with solutions in terms of how you strengthen your economy. You know that on Sunday, when the president spoke, he really focused on the challenges we are facing in relation to the economy and what the country is doing. And as we speak also, you know that in New York, we have CEOs of big financial institutions. We have the Minister of the Public Enterprise. We are told the Minister of Finance will be arriving in New York tomorrow as part of getting investments off the ground. And therefore, every country on the continent does believe that they can do more. You know that the Minister of Trade and Industry of Lesotho touched on that when he spoke to our colleague in relation to what Lesotho is benefiting, but saying they think that they can do more, and many countries are of a view that more needs to be done.
Well, let's talk about inclusion here at AGOA, Sophie. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement Secretariat is there. That's the first time that's happening. Unions, labor is there quite strongly as well. That's the first time it's happening. And the point being made is AGOA shouldn't be seen as the be-all and end-all, but part of a complementary basket of tools available on the African continent to optimize trade. We think about intra-Asia trade, for example, extremely high. Intra-European trade, extremely high. But intra-African trade hovering just below the 20% mark at 18%. So Africans have got to think about how they partner with each other, how they work with each other, and use the instruments in the African Continental Free Trade Agreement to achieve their own objectives under AGOA.
Yes, you are correct. Countries can work together. You know, the African Continental Free Trade Area is earmarked to ensure that the regions do business amongst themselves, and finally the continent. And therefore, the decision by the CEO of the African Continental Free Trade Area to be here, the Secretariat, it is an important thing because you have to find a way how you ensure that much as you have this agreement with the Americans, but you don't leave out your project, the 2063, Agenda 2063. Within that agenda, you have to ensure that countries on the continent are increasing trade amongst themselves. And therefore, it is of importance for the African Continental Free Trade Area to come and see what role it can play in terms of ensuring that there's synergy. But secondly, the issue of infrastructure. You know that one thing that can make trade to flourish on the continent is infrastructure. Yesterday, I was speaking to a business person in mining. He was complaining about transportation of commodities, particularly when you look at our ports, and South Africa being a major country in relation to that. Currently, the Transnet falling apart and other areas of transport. But secondly, you also have a situation where the road infrastructure is not at its best in terms of connecting the continent, which is very critical. And therefore, I think the African Continental Free Trade Area can come in and encourage these countries to have better infrastructure where they can move these goods. As you know, that, for example, Botswana is supplying some products to the manufacturing companies of in the automotive sector. Lesotho is doing the same. If you don't have good infrastructure, how are you going to move those goods or those products on time?
Absolutely. And it goes down to something as practical as that. Do we have the logistics networks and infrastructure as well? Tomorrow, the President is going to address the forum. Sophie, thank you very much for giving us a summary of what occurred and transpired on day one. Our SABC News International Editor, Sophie Mokoena.